My name is Tamil, and I'm a university student. I like to read and to sing, and I enjoy spending time with animals and going on bushwalks. I'm also a former refugee. I arrived in New Zealand a few years ago from a refugee camp, where I spent most of my life. I'd been stateless for so long, so when I finally settled down, I was very grateful and excited to have a place that I could call home. Nevertheless, it pains me having to leave my family and friends behind. My opportunity to be resettled didn't come easily. Did you know that the average time a refugee spends in camp is 7 years? Until then, we simply had to wait. Even when the opportunity comes, it is not for us to choose where we want to go and whether we can go together as a family. In my case, by the time I was given the opportunity to resettle, I had not been able to access any formal education for over 10 years. My family wanted me to have the chance for a better life and to have a future. So they made the difficult decision to split up with me, despite the grief they felt and the worry that they may never see me again. My new life came at a great cost, so I'm determined to make something out of it. On my arrival, I learnt about Kiwi culture and the laws that govern New Zealand. I took language lessons so that I can engage with the local communities. I applied for work and tertiary education as soon as I was allowed to. I worked hard, long hours in harsh conditions, doing minimum wage jobs that only migrants like me are willing to take on. At university, I read everything I could get my hands on, and I tried to memorize every single word the lecturers say. I am keen to give back to this country, and I am inspired to make the world a place where every single person can live as a dignified human being. In my first few weeks at university, I was very excited but nervous. I didn't know anything or anyone. Eventually, I encouraged myself to socialize with my classmates. But when I introduced myself as a former refugee, people seemed to have no idea what the word refugee meant. Some international students showed disdain towards me because they had to pay international tuition fees, while I am seen as a domestic student. It's not fair that you are allowed to jump the queue, they said. They didn't understand that migrants have the choice and resources to move to a different country, whilst refugees are forced to resettle because the necessities of life and their basic human rights are not being met in their previous living conditions. People are made to waste their lives away in confined spaces that are not meant to host human beings. First, it didn't matter to me. I was just so excited to be able to study and to make friends like every other young person my age. Until one day, during a lecture about the housing crisis in New Zealand, my lecturers asserted their ideas of the cause of this complicated problem explicitly. It's all because of these refugees coming into our country uninvitedly, the lecturer said. They took our houses and our resources, and now the real New Zealanders have nowhere to live. All of a sudden, the classroom became quiet and still. Everyone in the classroom turned around to look at me. They all knew that I am a former refugee, and the lecturer knew it as well. I was shocked by what I had just heard, so shaken up that I couldn't say anything to justify myself. I felt sick, but I didn't know what to do. In the end, I just sat there and stared down at my hands in shame. What was I ashamed of? It wasn't my choice to grow up in a camp and having my childhood and youth snatched away from me. It wasn't my choice to leave my homeland escaping from war and persecution, which in fact is largely the very result of Western colonization and political intervention. It wasn't my choice to be resettled in a country that I have no roots in or connections to, because my homeland is no longer safe. Nor was it my choice to live this future all by myself, while knowing my mother, father, brothers and sisters, and my people are still back in the camp, day after day, anguishing their lives away. I know that despair, and yet I must be grateful. But no one knows any of that. Ever since that lecture, I feel like I'm the elephant in the room. I realize that to many people, I am just a queue jumper, an uninvited foreigner who imposed themselves onto other people's land, a benefit thief who is a huge burden to this community. Despite all the work I had done, all my efforts to fit in and to contribute, I will always be seen as an outsider. After the mosque attacks, I am now more aware of the long-lasting impact of misinformation and hateful words, especially when they come from authorities. Our actions are guided by our beliefs and ideologies, and when our minds are full of hatred, we do terrible things to each other. I couldn't help but worry how my lecturer's words will influence our classmates and colleagues, their friends and their children, and the next generation. We are all going to graduate and do important groundwork, and many of us will be working for the underprivileged minorities, including our ethnic diverged migrant and refugee community. But how can one serve the community well if they don't know anything about the people or even hold racist and discriminatory views towards them? We all bleed the same color, and we all need the same love, hope, and safety to sustain life. Yet the social constructs of race, ethnicity, nationality, and immigration status separate us.
I wish people could learn the truth about us and know our life stories.
I wish they could see us as living human beings, just like themselves, instead of a term or a number in the news.
Had they talked to me and gotten to know me, all the hateful misinformation would have been crushed right away.
My name is Tamil, and this is my experience of xenophobia and racism.